I'm Mark Golub with this Shalom TV news update. A great deal of attention has been paid of late to a possible military strike by Israel against Iran to destroy its nuclear development facilities. A New York Times Magazine cover story entitled Israel versus Iran, written by a veteran Israeli journalist after a series of interviews with Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, predicts that Israel will launch a preemptive strike against Iran sometime in 2012. Yet on Super Bowl Sunday, President Obama, speaking with NBC anchor Matt Lauer, said that Israel does not currently have any specific plans to attack Iran. Well, for some Israeli comment, we're joined now from Jerusalem by Shalom TV commentator and Jerusalem Post columnist Isi Leibler. Isi, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure.
Isi, you know there's a lot of discussion in America these days about the possibility of an Israeli strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Is there similar discussion in the Israeli press or among the Israeli people?
Well, if you're asking my opinion, there's too much discussion. And I think that a lot of ministers and a lot of politicians have got flapping gums. Because in my opinion, if Israel's going to do an operation, they don't talk about it. And if they are not going to do an operation and they're talking about it, it's not good. We don't know what's going on. I believe that there is quite a lot behind the scenes that we're not appreciating. I would like to believe that there's some sort of collaboration between our Prime Minister and your President, because otherwise there's a certain amount of madness in the air. Too much talk. None of us really know what the situation is. But one thing we are all clear on, Iran is a genuine existential threat to us, and we have to convince the world that it's not only us, but it's a threat to the whole of Western civilization. Because you're dealing here with an element, if it gets hold of a nuclear weapon, it can change the face of the world in an awful way. Only in the last week, those who have been following the media, some of the stuff that's been coming out of there has been horrific. You've had media reports saying how many bombs it would take to wipe Israel off the face of the world. You've got Ayatollah Khomeini himself, who's been reasonably restrained, talking about getting rid of us and collaborating with anybody that wants to get rid of us. And of course, Ahmadinejad has been carrying on his genocidal rants on and off. Now, I would like to believe that the world is coming to its senses. And I think there is a certain appreciation that this is not just an Israeli problem, and that the only people facing a real threat are not Israel, the whole of the Arab world, the oil structure. On the other hand, many of us feel that for Israel to take it on by itself, it will have to be we'll really have to, A, know that we can do the job properly, because starting something we can't finish is not the sort of thing we want to get involved in. And B, we know that it's going to cause a lot of dislocation. It's going to create economic chaos. It's going to create a lot of enmity against us. And we believe that this is something we should not have to carry on our own shoulders. And we would like to believe that there will be a coordinated effort between us and the Americans, and hopefully even the rest of the Western world. I do not believe that sanctions alone are going to stop these people from getting the nuclear bomb.
That means you believe a military strike of some kind, either by Israel alone or Israel in concert with, for example, the United States, is necessary.
May be necessary. I don't want to go and be dogmatic on anything which has to deal with military activity, because I don't know enough. All I know is that it's a huge job for a small country like Israel, and the repercussions on us are going to be immense on our civilians, because they will unleash Hamas, they will unleash Hezbollah, we will have possibly even the Syrians getting involved in this. And above all, we don't know where Egypt's going to stand when a conflagration comes. We could be heading for another 1967 or 1973 situation. So I don't want to be a one that says we are going to do it if and not. I don't know enough, and I'm being quite honest and modest to pull back. And unlike many of my fellow commentators, I'm not going to predict what's going to be, other than I believe and I have confidence that ultimately sanity will prevail not only on America, but the rest of the world will begin to awaken to the potential of what the world will look like if these people, who are not going to even be deterred by mutual destruction. You have a messianic lunatic element there that will want to go to heaven if it means taking us out. You only have to look at the last war with Iraq. They sent 1 million kids. If you remember, I think if my memory serves me correctly, they had plastic keys on their necks as they went to their deaths, keys to go to heaven and to achieve martyrdom. We're dealing with something which is barbaric and primitive and has to be stopped. And I hope that your president is aware of that, as I believe he is. I know he wants to stop it, but I hope he realizes that this is one time where civilization can be on the brink if the right action is not taken.
All right, I need to press you one more time. On the one hand, you're saying to me you do not believe sanctions will work. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes.
If you believe sanctions will not work, aren't you saying that some military action will be necessary?
Probably.
And the only issue for you...
When I say sanctions will not work, there is a very, very delicate situation in Iran. It is a country which is on the edge of a revolution. The middle class are totally against it. The young people are hostile towards it. You may have, as a result of pressure from the outside world, internal reforms or an internal revolution and a regime change. That is the dream of all of us that want to see a peaceful solution. In the event that this does not happen, and in the event that sanctions do fail, I fear that the only answer will be a military response.
Izzy, why do you think Ehud Barak gave such a lengthy and detailed interview to the New York Times?
I would like to believe that he did it because he's trying to play the tough cop and to create an atmosphere of tension and to wake up Americans and public opinion. On the other hand, I'm also concerned that he may be suffering from the disease that I referred to amongst Israeli politicians, flapping gums and talking too much. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm. You've sort of spoken to this already, but I want to ask it in a more direct way. Is there any general consensus in Israel over the wisdom and efficacy of an Israeli strike against Iran?
There is a unanimous, or not unanimous, there is a virtual consensus that if Israel is strong enough and if Israel moves, there is a consensus that a military strike would be justified if they can pull it off and if they have the military capacity of doing it. But people don't know that.
Don't know what?
What our military capacity is.
Yes.
Rightly so, the IDF is not going to announce what its capacity and what its potentials are. So we don't know, and we shouldn't know. This is not something that's going to be determined in the street. This is something at a very senior level of intelligence and the military combined with the politicians and the highest level have to quietly determine amongst themselves. It's not commentators like me that are going to make the decision.
Okay.
And we shouldn't. We can only observe and guess.
We read in the New York Times piece that the reporter says to Ehud Barak, you know, there are very respected military people in the state of Israel who don't believe a strike could succeed. And he gives the former head of the Mossad, and he gives the former chief of staff of the Israeli army as an example. And Barak's answer is simply, I and Prime Minister Netanyahu are now the ones who must make this decision. There is no, if you look up at the sky, there's no one between us and the sky. We will make the decision ourselves. In general, does that evoke in Israelis a sense of confidence or in any way a sense of criticism of the defense minister?
I think that if it was left to just our prime minister and defense minister to make such a decision, there would be concern. Because for two people to make such a momentous decision of existential implications for us is a heavy burden. But you have a security cabinet and a broader cabinet of 17 people that will ultimately, the majority of whom will have to make that decision. It is not a decision just to have an operation. This is a decision which can have vast implications, and I have no doubt that the Prime Minister will not do this without the majority of his cabinet. If the majority of his cabinet go along with him, I have total confidence that they know what they're doing, they will succeed, and they will move in that direction if that is what they decide.
That's very interesting for us to hear. Isi, Ehud Barak seemed to indicate that the United States had given Israel a tacit green light with regard to a strike against Iran. How important do you think it is for Israel to first obtain U.S. approval of any Israeli military operation against Iran?
If Israel has the capacity of taking them out, then I have no doubt that they will do so with or without their approval. They should get their approval. It should be done in coordination. And what Mr. Barak says and what other people have been saying have been so contradictory over the last 12 months that there is general confusion and people do not know. And I cannot answer that question any more than that.
Okay.
But I do believe that if we have the capacity of doing it, we ultimately have to rely upon ourselves if we have that capacity. I would again say that I have hope that President Obama, particularly now with the edge of an election coming up and everything else, recognizes and will not allow a beleaguered ally like Israel to go down the tubes. He has repeated again and again he's going to stand by us, and I would like to believe that whatever differences we have had with him over diplomatic issues relating to the peace process, on this we are at one. I would like to believe that. I would hope to believe that. I believe that his policy towards the Arab world has been bad and foolish and misguided, but I do hope and believe that he now understands what the stakes are.
I believe that's the sense we here in America have about the president and his foreign policy vis-a-vis Iran. You know, Izzy, the world condemned Israel when Menachem Begin had the Israeli Air Force knock out Iraq's nuclear facility, though as years have gone by, the world seems very grateful for that Israeli action. And then the world did not seem terribly upset when Israel struck the Syrian nuclear facility. What do you think world reaction would be to an Israeli strike against Iran now?
If Israel was successful and took out the Iranians, the Arabs would cheer and come out and condemn us. The Europeans would scream that their oil revenues were impacted and condemn us, and I would hope that the Americans would stand by us.
Okay, I have to wrap up by asking you what I consider to be the most important existential question between you and me that I can ask. I want to know, Izzy, how much do you and your wife and your friends actively worry on a day-to-day basis about an Iranian nuclear attack against Iran, were Iran to develop a nuclear weapon? How much anxiety does it cause you in real life these days?
We should logically be much more concerned than we are. We go ahead with our lives. The life of the people of Israel is extraordinarily good, although we could be on the edge of a very major outburst of hostilities, and we do really, as you say, face a great threat in the years to come. But we have confidence both in ourselves and the Ribono Shel Olam, and we believe that we will overcome this as we have in the past. We are not having sleepless nights, although I would be lying if I didn't say we're not all concerned. Of course we're concerned, but I believe that the Western world is living in false optimism if they are not concerned for themselves as well, because a nuclear bomb in the hands of these people could go off just as well in New York or in London or in Sydney or anywhere else in the world.
There are people who've pointed out, by the way, that one of the places Iran might give a nuclear weapon to is Venezuela. And then, lo and behold, in our hemisphere here in the Americas, there would be a nuclear threat. And America has always felt, you know, a certain degree of security, especially after the Cold War, that there is no imminent nuclear threat against this country, except if a terrorist were to bring in a dirty bomb. But if there were another country that had the capability of launching a nuclear strike against the United States of America, in some way it would, I don't know, I want to use the word change. It would certainly exacerbate the extent to which Americans would feel a kinship with Israel. And Americans have to understand that that is not a wild fantasy. It is a real possibility, and that, as you say, and so many people say it now, Izzy, over and over again, this is not simply a threat against Israel, it's a threat against Western civilization.
That's the message we have to get out. And let's pray that we never get to the stage where they have a bomb to give to anybody.
Okay, Izzy, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very slim, 10 very great, 1 to 10, how likely do you think it is that Israel will launch a preemptive strike against Iran in 2012?
5, right in the middle. I have no idea. And that's the truth.
Okay, but it means it's possible in your mind.
Certainly possible.
Okay.
I've never said it's not possible. But it's certainly not certain either.
Isi Leibler, I can't thank you enough for sharing time and opinion with us on this obviously sensitive, crucial issue. I look forward to seeing you very soon in New York City, and we will always turn to you for more insight into the Israeli scene. Thank you so much.
Always my pleasure, Mark.
Thank you.
Shalom from Yerushalayim.
And those are the thoughts of Shalom TV commentator and one of the leading columnists in Israel today, Isi Leibler. And you can read Izzy's column each week in the Jerusalem Post, or you can sign up to receive his weekly column by email by going to wordfromjerusalem.com. I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.